Okay, looks like we're ready to kick things off. Good evening, my name is Mark Broman. I'm the Executive Director of the Wachiska Audubon Society. Welcome to our September meeting. I want everyone at home to also be welcome. We've got people joining us online. Wachiska is an independent chapter of the National Audubon with a geographical area covering 17 counties in southeast Nebraska. You can follow us on our website and on our Facebook site. And I'm going to have Teresa Pello, our president, come up and make a couple announcements, and then I've got a whole string of announcements that I'll go through. So with that, I'll turn it over to Teresa for just a minute, and then we'll...
That tall grass blue stem thing is pretty impressive, yeah. Okay, good evening, everyone. First announcement, the monthly board meeting will be held this Tuesday, I think the 19th, at 7 p.m., and we hold those via Zoom. They are open. If anyone wants to sit in, you're welcome to, and you can contact Mark or Arliss to get the Zoom link. All right, out of breath. Okay, the next one is nominations for the 2024 board. Some of the board members are up for election, so those are open. Nominations are open now through September 30th from Franz. So we will be electing a secretary, a treasurer, and up to 5 or 6 directors. Kind of have a little bit of flexibility there. So they're 2-year terms. So if there's someone that you think you might be interested or you know someone who might be, let me know. So that's coming up. And then, I don't know if we announced this last month, but the attorney that Wachiska has used for years, or I guess I should say has volunteered for years to help with legal work, Don Pepperell, has retired, is now a retired attorney. So he's no longer practicing law. So we need to find someone who is familiar with doing conservation work and contracts, more so than the administrative personnel type legal stuff. So again, if you know an attorney who's looking for to give a few hours here and there, it's not a big commitment, but there is some work every once in a while that can take up a little bit of time. Let either Mark or myself know. And with that, oh, and one last thing, before Mark introduces Steve, our speaker tonight, I just wanted to let you know that Aldersgate Gardens is one of the sponsors for Wachiska's 50th anniversary celebration. So when Mark introduces, give Steve a warm welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Like you said, I've got a whole bunch of things to announce tonight. I did bring a few flyers out at the table. If you didn't sign in, please do. We like to keep track of the people that come and attend in person. But we've got some of the 50th anniversary luncheon flyers out there for Doug Tallamy's talk. That again will be on December 3rd at Innovation Campus, the old State Fairgrounds. And in early October, that first week in October, we'll go live with a registration system. And you can sign up for the lunch or the lecture. The lunch is $40, but the lecture's free. You don't have to come to the lunch, but you do have to have a ticket to come to that afternoon lecture. We'll have 400 seats at that, and so we want to make sure everybody's signed in. And there will be free parking that day on Innovation Campus. So if you're interested in coming to the luncheon or the Tallamy talk on December 3rd, be sure and register starting in early October. We're currently taking bird seed and Audubon calendar orders. Arliss has them with her tonight out there, so after the meeting, if you want to stop out at the front table, if you forgot all about it, want to get it in, we've got until October 4th. That's when the orders are due, but you can also sign up tonight. And of course, the seed sales is one of our larger money-making campaigns for the year, so we do encourage folks and members to sign up and buy some bird seed. It's very high quality, as all of you know that have ordered in the past. On Saturday, October 21st at 8:30, Tim Houghton will lead a birding trip to Little Salt Fork Marsh, north of Lincoln. And look in the October Babbling Brook. That'll be out that first week in October, and if you get electronically, sometimes it comes out even before the 1st. There will be more information there, or you can always call the office, but again, that's October 21st. We're also planning to have a second Saturday seed collection on October 14th. That's the second Saturday in October at 10 o'clock at Deacon Prairie. And if you're interested, let me know. I think Ross Locke will be kind of leading that effort. Then I wanted to make an announcement tonight that board member Ethan Fries, who's here tonight, had a photo in the current current issue of Sierra Club. So Ethan has this nice photo in here. There's a story about the time lapse. So we'll give Ethan a hand back there. So he has some notoriety there in that national publication. And also, he's got some pictures that he had at The current project down at Dr. Powers has an exhibit of nematodes down at, it's called Wall Space Gallery down on 17th and Sumner, and that's Mike Farrell's project. And there's a project down there, and Dr. Powers' spouse is on the Wachiska board. And so Chris is here in the audience tonight. And so, Chris, thanks for coming tonight. But it is a great exhibit down there. Nematodes are tiny, tiny. I think one of the things said they're smaller than the period on a page, but they've got them blown up. So they look like something out of a Star Wars movie. But if you get a chance, go down there and see some of Ethan's photos of the prairies, and then also see some of those nematodes that are from all over Nebraska prairies, and I think even from the Antarctic. But there's some neat ones there. And Knott Prairie was one of the ones of our prairies that was featured there. So get down to there, and that exhibit's there till September 30th. So if you get a chance, 17th and Sumner, Wall Space, Mike Farrell's space down there. We will be hosting a group of Odo Missourians from Oklahoma next week at Knott Prairie and Deacon Prairie. They'll be in town to celebrate the second annual Odo Missourian Day that the city of Lincoln started last year, and we're continuing that this year. And then we have a couple Prairie Discovery Days coming up at Knott Prairie and Deacon Prairies. And then we have 3 nature nights that are coming up at Arnold Elementary, Holmes Elementary, and out at Brainerd. So if you're interested in volunteering for any of those or helping out, let myself know or Tim Knott know. We're still looking for some volunteers to go out. And Teresa mentioned the poster over here, this big banner. We just received that, got that yesterday from Rachel Simpson. She donated that to Wachiska. She was telling us about it, and she thought it'd be great for the nature nights. So that's a 14-foot banner that shows a big blue stem and lead plant. And so afterwards, be sure and come up and see. You can see how much roots there are underneath the surface, that there's more roots than there is plant above. But I wish we could hang it straight up tonight, but we just didn't have time or facilities. But we will take it out to these nature nights, and we'll try to take it out to the Prairie Discovery Days to let kids see just what's underneath the soil, because it's very impressive. I'll take just a couple minutes and see if we had any unusual bird sightings. I did see on Facebook today that someone out in Polk, Nebraska had an albino grackle. They had a tree full of grackles, and there was an albino there with them, and that was kind of impressive. So I thought that was kind of a fun picture. But has anybody had anything? I know last week some people were telling me they still had a few hummingbirds, but this week it sounds like they're kind of tapering off. So did anybody have any unusual sightings or hummingbirds back here? Yeah? Yeah, you got to watch bees when you have. I don't have a good suggestion. Maybe someone in the audience has some suggestions. Does anybody have any good suggestions on how to keep bees out of your feeders? And make sure you clean those hummingbird feeders. People neglect to do that. You need to do that, frequently, so that you don't have any germs floating around there and passing between. Back in the back here, yep. Yeah, so you had a hummingbird visiting this morning. Oh, you had to get him out? Okay. Yep. Sure, he was trying to get out. And okay. Linda's actually got the microphone out, so we'll use that so people at home can hear the question or the bird. So you've got a sighting?
Well, I have a suggestion about how to get rid of
Okay, bees at the hummingbird
bees.
feeder? Okay.
It wasn't a planned incident, but I only realized several weeks. I mean, I waited a long time because I wanted my orioles to keep coming to the feeder. They didn't come, but there was still jelly in the bottom of the feeder cup, and there were lots of bees. And it turns out my blue jays are eating the bees.
There you go.
So there's a solution right there.
So if you can get some blue jays over to your hummingbird feeders, that'll help out. Okay, we've got another bird sighting here. We've got a microphone. Go ahead if you have.
I don't know if the rest of you will be as excited about it, but it was a yard bird first to me to have a blue-headed vireo.
That's a nice one. Yeah. Okay, I think we had one over in the middle. Someone had a sighting. Do you have? Here comes the microphone. Yep, there we go.
Still having hummingbirds. I had 2 hummingbirds fighting over the feeder today.
Okay, good.
And the orioles are tapering.
Okay, Orioles are tapering off, people are saying, but you still have a few hummingbirds around. That's good. Anybody else? Oh, back in the back here. Oh, we got one up. Todd, you got one? Go ahead.
I've had a screech owl calling in my neighborhood for the last week.
Oh, yes.
I have a screech owl calling in my neighborhood in the last week, every night, and I wondered, why is the screech owl calling in the fall? Well, I guess they're young, they were born this year, and they don't go far from where they were born, and they set up their own territory, so that even though they're going to migrate and come back, they're already trying to establish now.
Okay.
So I went out last night in the middle of the night because I was awake, insomnia, and I just imitated it twice, right to me, and landed in a tree right overhead. I couldn't see it, of course, because it was in all this foliage. I waited for a while. I'm sure it was looking at me, and finally I just said, okay, I'm going to leave and go back inside. But I just was shocked at how quickly he responded. I could see him. He came from the bottom of the street right at me. He knew exactly where I was. It only took two little whinnies, and he was right on me.
Yeah.
Or she. Could be a she.
Well, you have a new neighbor. Hopefully
I
it sticks
do.
around. So we
Yeah,
got someone in the
apparently
back.
they'll come back, so
We'll
I'm really
pass
glad.
the microphone back here. Yep, Bertha's got something right back there.
Yeah, I'm from Pennsylvania, and we had hummingbirds and Baltimore orioles all the time. So I really miss them. So every year it seems like a immature hummingbird comes through, and so this one did come through, and I went out to chase the cat away from the birds, and he went to the feeder, and then he came right at me, and I thought, oh, I didn't even have red on. It must have been my odor or something. But he veered off. He
Yep.
stayed away.
Okay.
But I had, I was out on a walk, and I never take my cell phone with me or my phone with me to take pictures. But in the thicket, there was this little bird, and it was like a fat little bird, and it was sort of yellowish, but he had stripes on his, brown stripes on his head. And of course, I'm not very good at looking things up. Would anyone have any clue what kind of a little fat bird? And then he didn't seem to want to fly, and then I couldn't find him anymore because he was in the thicket.
Was it a light yellow or a bright yellow?
It was more brownish yellow.
Okay. Sounds like a warbler of some sort. Does anybody have any with the stripes on the head? Is that ringing a bell with anyone? We'll have to think on that one, Bertha. Okay. Anybody else have anything? Okay, I do want to announce that tomorrow there are going to be 9 of Paul Johnsgard's wood carvings at a tag sale in Omaha that I'm kind of watching to see. They finally put the prices out there, but you have to be one of the first people in line. The line starts at 4 o'clock, but they'll give numbers out starting at noon, so it's going to be a whole day affair to get in. But anyway, so they've got 9 of Paul Johnsgard's carvings that are going to be up at a tag sale in Omaha tomorrow, and it'll be the next 3 days, but I'm sure they'll probably go the first day. But I just thought I'd mention that to the group. This is a reminder also, tonight's presentation and past presentations are available on YouTube, so you can check those out. And then after tonight's presentation, Ethan will be showing the 5th and final wetland film of the 5-part series that we've been enjoying this summer. So the 5th one will be tonight, and it's a 29-minute long. And so if you're online, feel free to stay online. We'll take about a 5-minute break. People will go out and get a drink and a cookie, and then we'll try to get back in and get that started up right away. So if you want to watch it and you're at home, just go ahead and stay on. And we'll pull it up right then. And with that, it's my pleasure tonight to introduce tonight's speaker, Stephen Schaefer. Steve's from Aldersgate Church, and over the past 8 years, they've transformed 1.9 acres into a beautiful green space. Steve will tell us more about this truly remarkable garden that they have created. Steve is retired from the governor's budget office, and he now enjoys work at Aldersgate and with the Nature Conservancy. He's also a long-term Boy Scout volunteer. And with that, thank you for joining us, Steve. And tonight we'll take questions after Steve's presentation. And I do know also, and I'm sure you'll probably announce it, I think Aldersgate's got a big event coming up, don't they, in the garden?
Well, yeah, we're doing our annual garden party on Sunday.
Okay, so
More on that later.
I'll turn it over to you, Steve.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you this evening and tell our story. So let me get the clicker working, and then we'll start. One of my roles as a volunteer is chairing the Board of Trustees at Aldersgate Church, and has come responsibility for our 1.9 acres of green space. And that's the land after you subtract out the building and the parking lot and sidewalks. And initially, this was about 2016 when I took that job. we had some ideas for landscaping, but more the traditional thought of, foundation plantings and things like that. But I attended a seminar sponsored by the Nebraska Statewide Arboretum on sustainable landscaping, and that got us starting thinking about other things. So tonight, I didn't mean to forward that forward, but tonight I'm going to talk about what we've done with our 1.9 acres. I'm going to talk some about the history, our purpose, what we've accomplished so far, and future plans. And I'll touch on some questions such as why we're doing this, who we're doing it for. This slide kind of summarizes the key features. We have a playground, we have 2 rain gardens. The upper one has a small permanent pool of water, 2,000 square foot mini prairie in between those 2, and then just massive plantings that we've been adding to every year, and some benches, places to sit, and some paths. It doesn't show up real well, but the yellow circle shows a bumblebee that's visiting our plant. So our vision, this is our vision statement that we've been working from for a number of years. And dissected, it has 3 important components. We're creating a small neighborhood park. We are focused on selecting plants based on their benefit to wildlife, birds and pollinators especially. And we're providing a small nature-based playground for children. And so these just some numbers summarizing what we've accomplished so far. And these numbers are already inaccurate, but because this week we're adding 16 shrubs and 288 perennials. I just recently calculated how much grass we've eliminated, and that number actually surprised me. We've gone from about 85,000 square feet of traditional lawn, although this traditional lawn had a lot of weeds in it and junk grass, and it's now down to I think about 25,000 square feet, and there's more to go. Now let's talk a little bit about the history. This is an aerial photo from a few years before 2016. I'm not real sure when it was taken. But as you can see, a lot of grass. And from this distance, that lawn looks pretty nice, doesn't it? We have some mature trees, and particularly was a double row of lodgepole pines, kind of a windbreak. And that was planted when the church was built in the 1970s. But quite a few trees were dead or dying. Mowing all of that took a good 4 hours or longer. There was a small playground, but it was old and substandard. The play surfaces were grass and packed gravel. It lacked visual appeal or much to do. But on the positive side, note the location and ease of access. South Street on the south of the property, Pinedale along the north, 84th Street. So the location is very well suited to being a neighborhood park. Don't blame me for the flickering lights. Okay, so we had a few problems that we were dealing with. One was runoff, and this picture was taken from the neighbor's deck, and he shared the photo with me as, I think, as an encouragement to try to do something. But what we're dealing with was not just, the runoff from the ground, about an acre of land goes by there, but the runoff from the roofs also is kind of all funnels. So it flooded our playground and then flooded the neighbor's backyard. I think one neighbor had some, water problems in the basement as a result of these. And the lawn was another issue. The weeds, this springtime, dandelions dominated. In the summer, we'd have a mass invasion of crabgrass. And when we'd have a rain like this, there's low spots that would stay soggy for weeks. So that was undesirable. So we had some challenges. We got started in the fall of 2016. There's a little area by the church that we wanted to eliminate the grass because this is very, very poor condition. And so I learned about the statewide Arboretum's Bloom Box program. And actually, just a word of warning, for us anyway, the Bloom Box was like a gateway drug. So treat it carefully if you ever buy one. So then, as I mentioned, later that year, I attended a seminar on sustainable landscaping organized by Nebraska Statewide Arboretum. And there I learned about grants. The NSA had grants, some other organization had grants, and I'm a sucker for grants. So I also met Luann Finke, and we developed an excellent collaborative arrangement. So that got us started, because we wrote grants for that, but it was a totally separate issue. We finally dealt with the problem with the runoff. The neighbors collaborated, paid the full cost of the $3,100 price tag for bulldozing a different channel for the water to go. So now it runs out, dumps out on Pinedale. Okay. So over the years, we've removed about 25 dead and dying trees. This also made room for a greater variety of new trees and shrubs. We've installed a rain garden. The first one was 2017. I guess the euphemism would be that it was a learning experience. So the first effort was washed out, and the second effort was washed out, and finally the third time was charm, that plus 1.5 tons of rock that we finally put in to hold back the heavy rains that came that year. But the end result was worth it. You know, the blisters healed, sore backs mended. Okay, and just about every spring and fall we've had a major planting. That's my granddaughter. Isn't she cute? So. And then some more pictures of landscaping. I'm really pleased that we've had 3 Eagle Scout service projects that have been done. 2 were sort of traditional landscaping efforts. One was installation of 2 of these entrance signs, one at South Street and the other on Pinedale Avenue, literally inviting the public to consider this as their space. I mentioned that we put in a new playground. It includes a hill slide. It has a swing for toddlers, a 2-level fort with a slide, a large log for climbing. I'll talk about that a little bit more. And then a sand pit that's 6 foot by 10 foot by 18 inches deep. And that has become very popular. There's often young family will come and kids will be playing in that sandbox. And that's all within a fenced-in area. Then the hill slide that has a 7-foot drop is outside the fence. I mentioned the log. It's 11 foot long. It's an ash tree. I'm told it's 3,000 foot. I think I kind of calculated that. I got online and you give the dimensions and it estimates. Anyway, it just actually exceeded the capacity of that little skid loader. And a couple of times, skid loader was nose down and the rear wheels were up, and you'd finagle it to get balanced again. And kudos to Hoffling Enterprises, because they donated and installed that log and a couple of, you can see the tree stumps that they brought as well for sitting and climbing. No charge. So super, super nice. This is something that we did. I happened to see a bird poster, I forget what the name of the park, just across the river in Iowa, and tried to get them to sell me theirs, but they didn't want to deal with it because of copyright issues. So I worked with the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, who gave us permission to use their pictures, and then we have a graphics artist type at the church, and he put it together in that poster. So it just shows some of the common birds that you might see in this area. Except I forgot to put, robins, but you can't put every bird on there. And then I mentioned the 2 rain gardens. The second rain garden we put in 2021 and have done some improvements to it since then. And I should mention that we use the City of Lincoln's urban rain garden grants for both of these. And we constructed that check dam at a place and height so it holds back a 1-inch rainfall and the runoff from essentially an acre of land and much of the church's roof. This year we added bentonite. We dug out the pool a little bit deeper and added bentonite so that it hold water. That's a little bit counter to the purpose of a rain garden, but there's plenty of other areas that will absorb the rain. But we wanted to maintain, a small pool of water for, birds, bees, and mammals, as this shows. And just a 1/4 inch rainfall will fill this. And if we have a dry spill, we have it set up so it's pretty easy to, fill it up. It takes about 15 minutes to fill it up. So a couple bathtubs full of water. And as this picture shows, we have visitors. Someone at church has installed one of those little trail cameras. And
What is that, a fox?
yeah, that's a fox. Raccoons. We've also had opossums, a deer, and I'm not sure, maybe I shouldn't be showing that picture on top. I'm not sure if neighbors would appreciate the fact that of all the mammals that we're attracting. So, we did, and the person who goes there to check out the trail cam also found this feather. It's about 8 inches long. I should have brought it. She thought it was from a hawk, because I think she had just a little glimmer of a picture of a hawk on her trail cam. Does anyone recognize what it's from? So,
What are the dimensions?
it's roughly 8 inches. 8, maybe 7 or 8. Our hope eventually is that we can introduce some small frogs and turtles, so the pond will become an attraction for children as well. So, paths are the other thing we've introduced. That's odd. Okay. Yeah, I don't know what happened. On my printout, it's right, but hey, that's okay. And paths are just absolutely critical for inviting people to tell them you have permission to explore. And plus, the 2 from the side streets leading to the playground are pretty essential. This spring, we plan to install another 240 feet of paths, either this fall or next spring. And that one will kind of be parallel to South Street. And what we do is we eliminate the grass, install the path, then we landscape on either side. So when that's fully grown, it'll be just like walking through, a corridor surrounded by nature.
What is your base, what do you put on the pathway?
Just mulch.
Oh,
Yeah,
granite mulch?
yeah, it's just wood mulch.
Oh, there's wood.
Yeah, I put down landscape fabric just to help out a little bit. Now we looked at, the ideal would be, I forget what it's called, not crushed granite, but there's a product that's very, very nice, but a little bit out of our price range. Benches are also essential. We don't have enough, and as time goes on, we'll figure out additional places to put them. I read this great article once that said, a park without benches is not a park. And that's true. You've got to encourage people to sit. So that's on sort of the to-do list. Oh, I see, Linda warned me that a couple of slides were turned around, but on my PowerPoint, they're okay. So this doesn't show real well. There's this program called the Chronologue program that it's set up so you can take a picture of a same scene time after time, email it to that group, and then they splice it into a time-lapse video. And it's kind of intended for sensitive environmental areas so people can record what's happening, what's changing over time. But they let anyone do it. I think it's $200 a year for the service. But you see that little, it doesn't show real well, but that's a little holder for one's cell phone. So you just put the cell phone on that holder and snap a picture and then email it to Chronologue with ALD-101 on the subject line, and then they add it to the time lapse. And the owner of I have the authorization to then eliminate some photos if they're poorly done or something. So that's kind of fun. And we set it up over the area that we're just now landscaping last fall and this spring and now again this fall. And so it will show how that changes over time. One other thing we introduced this year is a demonstration project. The background on this is in February, the Nebraska State Arboretum has an annual publication called The Seed. And this year's issue was devoted to several articles about rethinking the lawn, and it encouraged readers to replace their resource-intensive turf grasses with environmentally friendly lawn substitutes. And that gave us the idea of creating several plots with various lawn substitutes so that people could see for themselves what something looks like. And we want to sort of become the one-stop shop for eco-friendly lawns. And we have a couple that are pretty well established and look nice, a couple others that really have had trouble with germination rates, which trying to plant stuff in the drought without a watering system other than by hand, that's my excuse. But so it's a work in progress. But I think I had one handout that explains the project. I think eventually it could be a very worthwhile service for the community. Okay, plans for the future. Just as an aside, I'm not real sure what plant this is, maybe a hyssop or something like that, but it is a magnet for butterflies and bees. And I took these pictures on August 2nd. I looked up on my phone, took those pictures on August 2nd, and I'm still seeing like as many as 5 monarch butterflies at a time in this patch, and any number of other butterflies and just lots of bees. Okay, plans for the future. Of course, more plantings in that path I mentioned. I think we can reduce the turf grass from the current 25,000 square feet to about 10,000 square feet. I think that's doable. I mentioned the demonstration plots for eco-friendly alternative salons. We need to get more benches and places to sit where people can just absorb nature. There's a swing set that's right outside the fence that's for older children. That needs to be replaced with a safe surface. Outdoor fitness equipment is a possibility, and eventually I want to develop a good online catalog so people can look up and see what things are out there. We're also time to start thinking about updating our vision, because the vision I read earlier, we have essentially accomplished. And the purpose of the vision is to stretch and get you to look at what's possible. So our informal vision would be, we want to be a place that serves people living within a mile or two, including east of 84th Street. And I think we're creating a nature retreat that's really relatively unique in the city. And I think it could be a destination so that people come to visit it from even beyond a mile or two. Okay, we've talked some about the history and what we're doing. So let's go to the why. And of course, we are a church. So let's talk a little bit about the biblical reasons. The one I like best is the parable of the talents. Most people are familiar with that. The land that Aldersgate owns really is a gift. And the question is, how do we make the best use of it? The concept of stewardship is another reason. Stewardship in this context means taking proper care of the earth and resources entrusted to us. And then finally, service to others may be the most important. The Bible is all about service to others. Aldersgate Gardens and the playground are a type of service to the community. And then we are affiliated with the United Methodist Congregation, and John Wesley was the founder of that. And associated with John Wesley are his 3 simple rules for living by. And I like these, primarily because it's a shorter list than 10, which I just find hard to remember. So, basically, do no harm, do good. And we've put these on our entrance signs, if you read those from the pictures. But we modified it a little bit to be a little bit attractive to a broader audience. So do no harm, do good, love nature. Okay, of course the environmental benefits is another reason to do this. Trees and plants absorb carbon dioxide. And I just love this poster. I wish our church had a tall ceiling in it. I'd buy that, because that shows the root system of the native plants. And actually I've read that like a native prairie is more effective at sequestering carbon dioxide than even a forest, because that root system is so extensive. Okay, so trees and plants absorb carbon dioxide, generate oxygen. Trees, shrubs, and perennials, okay, you can read that. So environmental benefits is another reason. Health benefits. I think there's more and more evidence of the importance of nature, and being exposed to nature is to human health. The study I really liked, that caught my attention, was a study of hospitalized people. And it found that patients in rooms with a view of nature had better outcomes and quicker discharges than patients whose rooms overlooked for example, a parking lot or a nearby roof. And then the importance of nature on children is especially critical. You know, just take some time and read some of these impacts. And of course, I remember as a child, my mother ordering us to go outside and play. I kind of assumed that it was just because she was tired of us being underfoot, but now I'm sure she had some intuitive understanding of the nature benefits, of the benefits of nature. Okay, now let's discuss the who, and who would visit Aldersgate Gardens, who is helping. So I think studies show that a park has to be within a 5-minute walk in order for people to use it frequently. So that's sort of the immediate neighborhood. And if you spend any time, you'll occasionally see, you know, family coming with their stroller or kids in tow. People who live closer to Aldersgate, the nearest city park. And the next slide will show it a little bit better. When I was developing sort of the business case for doing some of the work we're doing, I analyzed who lived closer to Aldersgate than a neighborhood park. And according to the census data, there are 1,700 people and 780 households live within a half-mile walk and are closer to Aldersgate than the nearest city park. And that includes 2 large apartment complexes. And then there's tremendous residential growth just east of 84th Street that, unless I've missed it, they do not have any kind of park facility yet. So who's helping? It's really been a group effort. When we've got a planning to do, people show up and help. Of course, we've had many church members help with planning, planting, and maintenance. As I mentioned, we have had 3 Eagle Scout service projects. Neighbors have helped. In fact, that first year when we were putting a lot of trees, there were some that were real close to the neighbor. Teresa took over watering those for me and nursed them to mature status. Okay. The Ollie My Backyard group has helped, so thank you, and others too. But we can all use more help. So if you're interested, you know, don't be shy. See me. This is another picture of the group effort involved, this time with the playground. And this is an important slide because I need to express appreciation for all the funding sources we've had and technical assistance as well. And at the top of this list is the Nebraska Statewide Arboretum. Several grants, lots of technical assistance. City of Lincoln Watershed Management Division, rainwater grants and grants for eliminating traditional grass and putting in sustainable stuff. Lower Platte South Natural Resources District cost shared on a couple of grants, large grants for planting trees. City of Lincoln Community Forestry Division has just been great to work with. When I need a load of mulch, I just send an email and they'll dump a truckload in the parking lot. And so I think they'll do that for everyone, but it has to be the entire truckload. So if you can use 10 yards of mulch, let them know. And then Luann and Rich Finke, they've since have retired, moved away, but Luann did all of the planning, the landscape designs, and a constant source of assistance, and Rich was a great resource as well. And so now I still haven't quite figured out how to get along without him. Okay, so some final thoughts. takeaways. Aldersgate Gardens is becoming a special and unique place to experience nature and for small children to play. Aldersgate Gardens is now an important mission of this church, but there's much more to do. And then a plug for our garden party on Sunday from 3 to 6 p.m. This slide doesn't mention it, but we have 128 little perennials to give away. They're in those little, and these are from Midwest Native Nurseries, so it's excellent, excellent quality of stuff. So first come, grab a perennial.
Steve, I heard there was a rumor there was ice cream too, is that correct?
Yes, yes. This doesn't mention ice cream?
I don't see that there.
Okay.
It's a big, I thought I saw that.
Yes, ice cream. Ice cream. Okay. Another slide. That's weird. Okay. So we also want to mention that, landscaping we're doing a lot of, but energy conservation is also part of our story. And in last year, we achieved certification as a cool congregation. I should have worn my sunglasses. But we are now an official cool congregation after implementing some energy improvements that should reduce our utility consumption by a little over 20%. And to achieve this goal, we insulated 75% of the bare concrete walls of the original building, replaced 4 windows, changed out the heating and cooling systems, serving 50% of the original building, installing high-efficiency heat pumps instead. And so in combination of our energy conservation efforts and all the trees we've planted, we should be close to eliminating our carbon footprint or offsetting our carbon footprint eventually, when the trees get a little bit more size to them. So that's important to us too. Okay, that is the end. Any questions?
I'll get the microphones so we can get people on.
And I should have brought a piece of paper for sign up if anyone wants to help. But so you'll just have to send me an email. Any questions?
There we go. Okay. I'll come back and get Rosemary next.
Thank you, Steve. And all the times I've heard you talk about this, I don't think I ever caught, how did you get rid of the grass when you first started? Did you scalp it? Did you cover it?
Roundup.
Covered it?
No, Roundup.
Oh, Roundup, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
Glyphosate. Or
Got it.
you can't, or some, whatever product Duromay sells for killing grass.
I was wondering if you have any way of having people sign up and do certain jobs, organization. I was thinking of, for the plantings.
If you're interested, just contact me, and when we're doing something, I'll get in touch with you.
So how much time do you actually spend yourself on this?
Well, it's a little bit of time.
Okay.
Steve, is your email on those handouts? We had the handouts out front.
Yeah,
so,
it's also.
So yeah, so if you
also
want to get
there.
hold of Steve.
I don't know if
handouts
it's on the
out.
handouts, but
Other questions?
I do want to recognize Larry Ruth. He's a member of the congregation. He's been a partner in crime on some of this stuff. So
I will just say too that the bird poster with the kids on the kids' playground is wonderful, and that's a certain material that doesn't. It's like a metal sign or something, isn't it? It looks like it wouldn't fade, and it wouldn't.
yeah, no, it's done. I think was it Signs Now? They're on essentially 48th, next to Earl May. It's
Anyway,
it's
it's
an
really-
excellent product.
Yeah, your picture was a little faded, but it's a bright, beautiful picture of birds
Mhm.
for the kids.
Any other questions for Steve back here? Just a minute. Tim? Bring the mic.
You may not be able to answer this, but what are the top 5 species that you planted in their attractiveness to wildlife?
I'm sorry. You've now identified my weak point, which is I know very little about plants. And that was the magical thing about the relationship with the Finke Gardens and Nursery. You know, they'd tell me what to plant, so my job was just to put it in the ground and water it. So.
There you go. Any other questions?
So I have a question, and it might not be in your bailiwick then. In your 2023 experimental gardens with all the different grasses, can you tell us a couple species that are doing well?
Yeah. I really like the mini clover, and it's lush. And you know, all of this, you got to baby it to get it started, but I'm not watering it anymore. And then there's a bee lawn, and this is a product from a company in Minneapolis, and they have multiple versions of it, some intended for sunny spots. So I have 3 different versions, and the one I planted in the spring is really doing quite well, and I haven't touched it really for a month or 2. It's starting, you know, showing a little bit of stress from the drought, and I haven't mowed it. So, and there's another version of the bee lawn for sunny spots, and that I just planted 3 weeks or so ago, and it's coming up pretty nicely. And then another version for shade that I planted this fall that's starting to sprout pretty nicely too.
There was also a corner of the building that had bee balm that was almost as tall as I was, and I don't know how many bees you had in that corner.
Yeah. I'm sorry I couldn't answer the question. Catmint or calamint? Okay. That's just scads of bees in it all the time, and it flowers a long time. And then I think that hyssop plant I had a picture of earlier. Yeah, we have several varieties that.
If you haven't been over there, it's worth the trip.
Question over here?
Yes. Is it on? Okay. What watering did you do to get the plants established?
Typically, you know, once a week, if there's been no rain.
Just overhead sprinklers or what?
No.
No?
We don't.
What are you doing?
Well, no, it's hand watering.
Hand watering?
Mm-hmm. The hose.
I'm familiar with that. Very Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Oh.
I wondered about mosquitoes. Does that water move? Does your water move your little lake there?
No, but it hasn't been a problem. And we had a biologist from Game and Parks come out, and we talked about it, and he didn't think mosquitoes would be an issue. We have enough birds to take care of it, and I haven't noticed them. And
You got a question over
Steve,
there? Yes.
The buffalo, you'd have 2 buffalo grass. Were they planted from seed or sod?
Okay, the buffalo grass that's established, we did from plugs that I got from Todd Valley Farms. Yeah. But then this fall, someone told me about a variety called Sundance. So I purchased some of that from stock seed and planted it by seed. And that I'm watering by a impact sprinkler. And that's coming up pretty nicely. But it's, you know, just an inch tall now.
And I want to thank Aldergate for being on our tour of the wild side last year. And I'm sure in the future we'll probably come back again because you've got so many new plants out there. But we really appreciate you providing that for our tour last year. Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
With that, thank you, Steve. Remember, we're going to do some cookies, have some cookies available out in the other room, and then we'll come back in here in 5 minutes and have the last part of the wetland series that Ethan will be setting up. So come back in a few minutes and we'll set up again. If you need to order seed, bird seed, or calendars, remember to see our list before you leave and sign in if you didn't get signed in. Thanks.
Test, test, test.
Just turn this off for now. All right. Can everybody hear me? So this is the final film of the series of films about the wetlands in Nebraska that we'll be showing. So if you haven't been here for any of the other showings, these films were produced with, I work for Platte Basin Time Lapse, which is part of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And we partnered with Game and Parks to do this series of films about the wetlands in Nebraska. So this final film was produced by my colleague Grant Reiner, but it has footage from the whole Platte Basin Time Lapse team in it, and it's about riverine wetlands in Nebraska. So just all those wetlands that are associated with our rivers. So like sloughs and wet meadows and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's about 30 minutes long. So yeah, hope you enjoy it.
We have a diversity of rivers across Nebraska, and we have wetlands associated with every stream and river in the state. The thing that I find fascinating about wetlands and wetlands associated with rivers is the diversity and abundance of life that they support. So there's these amazing green, vibrant places.
There are three factors that make an area a wetland. The vegetation would like to grow in a place that's wet. And the second factor is the soils. And then the final factor is hydrology, or the presence of water. And water doesn't have to be there all the time. Wetlands frequently go dry and they flood and they go dry again.
The riverine wetlands we have are associated with rivers. They have wetlands on the fringe of the flowing water. Our larger rivers have wetlands associated with the floodplain, or the area nearby the river that the river periodically floods into. Or maybe you get some high changes in the groundwater level that creates those wetland areas along the river.
Some of the rivers that arise here, especially out of the sandhills, arise from groundwater from the Ogallala Aquifer. They're influenced by groundwater and also by rainfall. Some of the rivers also have this source of water coming out of the mountains as the snow melts. Wetlands are everywhere across Nebraska. They're different from season to season, year to year, and as you travel across the state, they're very different. And so that, to me, is something that's just a wonderful thing to be able to experience. We're out in far western Nebraska, just a few miles from the Wyoming border in the Panhandle, and we're along the North Platte River. Across this broad floodplain, you have lots and lots of meadow areas and sloughs and other wetlands associated with the North Platte River. Its flow is quite controlled by a series of dams upstream, dams that are both for flood protection but also for irrigation. Because of that, there are fewer wetlands out on the floodplain than there historically were.
Along the North Platte River, you have freshwater wetlands. There's also alkali wetlands. So these alkali wetlands, they're within the historic floodplain of the river. Through wet dry cycles, those salts in the soils continue to accumulate on the surface. You have that different invertebrates to different insects to different plants. That really provides great habitat for shorebirds, wading birds, waterfowl. It's this mix of all these different types of wetlands that really make this landscape unique. We're on the property that dry spotted-tailed creek runs through. Historically, it was ditched under the idea of drying out some of these riparian areas so that they could be farmed. Ducks Unlimited and Trout Unlimited and Prebee got together and came up with this idea of could we check up the water within this ditch and get it back up onto the surface of the meadow and create a new stream path for it. We'll stick to these historic features on the landscape, focusing on these low spots, putting in as much natural curve and add some features to it to, kind of mimic what you might see on a natural meandering stream.
A straight stretch of stream or river is not biologically productive as a stream in a more natural condition. They took that stream that had been straightened and they moved it into a new course that's longer, that has more interaction with the floodplain, and they put these bends in it. And a lot of different kinds of fish and wildlife really benefit from that diversity of habitat that happens when you have a stream that is more in a natural meandering, winding state. These wetlands that are associated with our deeper water rivers and streams and lakes are really important from a fishery standpoint. They're the nursery grounds for the fish. That's where the eggs hatch. That's where the young fish hang out and grow and then move out into the deeper water where anglers might catch them in the future. And you've got to meet the needs of all the life cycles of that fish. A majority of people in Nebraska get their drinking water from water that's associated with rivers. When that water flows into those wetlands, it comes out cleaner and better for human use downstream. We all want clean water and abundant water, and wetlands play a surprisingly important role in helping improve water quality.
On the spotted tail complex, we're building a wetland that is going to be catching some tail water off of an agricultural field. That water will come through vegetation, filter out sediments before it gets to the wetland itself. The wetland then will hold it. And that whole time it's moving through that sand and gravel, it's getting filtered, it's getting cleaned up. And so when it actually exposes back to the surface in the North Platte River, you have some pretty clean water compared to what ran off the parking lot or ag field a half-mile away. There's a lot of other benefits that we get from wetlands being on the landscape, and it's worth restoring and protecting.
These wetlands are a hotspot for biodiversity. My name is Emma Brindley Buckley, and I am a researcher with the University of Nebraska at Kearney.
My name's Andy Caven, and I'm the Director of Research at the Crane Trust. We study the responses of species of concern to managed and natural disturbances in the Platte River ecosystem.
The Platte River rises out of the mountains in Colorado and Wyoming. The South Platte comes out of Colorado and into the southwest part of Nebraska and meets the North Platte River near the town of North Platte. The North Platte and the South Platte are joined and become the Platte River that flows on across the rest of Nebraska.
Our little cabin, we have 20 legs, 2 cats, 2 dogs, and us.
We are fortunate enough to live right here on the river. A lot of our research takes place in the Central Platte. One of my favorite things is going out with Andy when they're doing fish seining. So going out to the sloughs and being able to look at the diversity of these small fish that are existing in these crazy wetlands out in the middle of a prairie, and being able to get into the water and sit down in the mud and sift through the muck and look for aquatic macroinvertebrates. Wetlands create this connection between the terrestrial landscape and the aquatic ecosystem. The wet meadows and all of the wetlands in the Central Platte are hydrologically connected to the river.
Our goal is to capture a number of the habitats within these slough systems so we can look at the composition of fish over time in relation to our management. The key thing to manage is to make sure the condition of wet meadows are appropriate for crane migration.
Nebraska is at the heart of the Central Flyway. A lot of our waterfowl congregate here during migration. Sandhill cranes that come through use that Central Flyway on their way up to the breeding grounds.
The Platte is this continentally important. It's not just important in Nebraska.
So one of my first experiences seeing the sandhill cranes, I didn't know what to expect going out to a blind on the river, and it's dark and you don't use headlamps, and we're getting in this box And as the sun comes up over the river, it goes from dark and dead quiet, and gradually the sound increases until there's just an orchestra. They are one of the most prehistoric, almost dinosaur-looking creatures that I think I've ever seen.
It's still one of the last great migrations in the world, and all the conservation work is trying to sustain that.
Wetlands are very, very productive, so they have lots and lots of food sources. That food being present is what attracts that migrating wildlife to use these riverine wetlands along their migratory journey. I view them as kind of like, from a human perspective, we think of rest stops along the interstate. You need to rest, you need to get some fuel to continue your journey when we travel. Well, wildlife are seeking the same things.
There's something about this landscape that is unexpected, and it's something you have to immerse yourself in and get into to appreciate that and just see how drastically variable it is.
Let's just go back to 6th grade. Where does that 6th grade brain want to go? Well, it wants to go to the wetland. That's where you're going to find something cool.
The Loup River system, those rivers flow out of the sandhills into the central part of the state. They converge and join up with the Platte River near the town of Columbus.
In Nebraska, we had roughly 30 mussel species in state. Now that we've dammed up rivers, there's less than 10 that are thriving. There's 6 or 8 that we would like to try to release in the next 10 years. Right now we've done 2, the pocketbook and the fat mucket. You know, and a lot of people say, well, why do you want to raise them? They're part of the native landscape. They deserve to be here. They're a great indicator species of the environment and how it is doing. And so they're an important part of the ecosystem that a lot of people don't know about. You know, hopefully we can bring some of those back. And the reproductive cycle of a mussel in and of itself is phenomenal that they can even exist. For the most part, the freshwater mussels in Nebraska require fish as a host species for their young. They typically use a way to attract the fish to bite them, and when they do, they release their glaucidia, or immature mussels, onto the fish. Most of them try to adhere to the gills of the fish, where they actually ride around as a parasite for the first 2 to 3 weeks of their life. And as they metamorphosize into a mussel, then they drop off of the fish. So when we're making them, we put fish and them in the same container, and we allow them to attach to the fish. We don't want to harm the fish, but we do want to get as many on as we can. We'll hold the fish for 2 weeks roughly, and the mussels will drop off the fish. And they're really tiny. All the mussels we put a glue dot on. We also put pit tags on us 10 to 20% that are going into a stream. And that allows us to go in there and find a portion of those mussels. We are stocking a few streams in the sandhills.
Oh, you hit it. I see. Right there.
Oh, I found him. We're measuring total length. There's the pit tag that we put on it. There's the one glue dot. The other glue dot migrated.
Yeah, it did. Still migrating.
Right. That was cool. Well, I mean, I've never, it's a big old peat moss bed right here. And I mean, I can stick my hand clear down it. And he was buried in it, just sitting there, just siphoning like they're supposed to. That's what he was in, was that kind of stuff right there. Pretty neat. large, so. Yep, I got you. You're reading.
Fringe wetlands are highly productive. A lot of organic matter gets produced there. So those fringes are very important for food production. They're very important for things like macroinvertebrates. Vegetation along streams even provides a food source for things like freshwater mussels.
Mussels do serve a very similar purpose to riverine wetlands. They're both trapping sediment, they're trapping nutrients. I mean, the wetlands are growing vegetation and everything that's utilizing that nutrients, so it isn't going straight into the river. The mussels, you know, they clean tremendous amounts of water every day if they're in high enough numbers. It's been a fun project. We've put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it. We're out here seeing something that most people don't even know exists out here, so that's pretty cool.
Every day is different on the Niobrara River. It starts out in Wyoming as basically a puddle you can jump over. And it really picks up speed as it comes across Nebraska. My name's Amy Kuchera. I am the Smith Falls State Park Superintendent. People before I was born had the foresight to protect this area so I could enjoy it. I really hope that that kind of attitude can continue on so people many years down the road can enjoy it like we are. Gordon Warwick contributed a lot to informing people about the different species and really the reasons why this river is so special. He particularly contributed to helping us protect the hybrid aspen tree.
There's always wetlands associated with the floodplain of a river, and the Niobrara is no exception. And there's not a lot of physical space for wetlands, but there are some where these spring branch canyons run out onto whatever floodplain there is. They're really important because they add a tremendous amount of diversity. And that aquifer that sits in the sandhills is flowing out. These canyons erode. It funnels the water in and consolidates it in a creek or a stream.
Those small streams are really important biologically because they feed the larger streams and wetlands.
There is so much diversity, there's so many stories to tell, so there's no end to what you can learn and study here about all of these species that are interacting. Both the aspen trees and the birch trees have persisted since the last ice age. They're both dependent on these unique, narrow microclimates that occur along about a 40-mile span of the Middle Niobrara River Valley.
The river has become more than a livelihood to me, it's a way of life. It is something that we're all very proud of, to have open skies, clean water, fresh air. It's a powerful way of living, and I think that more people that can come out here and experience that will realize that that's something that we need to protect and preserve for all time.
Right now we are in the wetlands of Fontenelle Forest in Bellevue, Nebraska. This right here is a floodplain that's attached directly to the Missouri River. Fontenelle Forest is actually connected to places as far west as Idaho and as far east as St. Louis, Missouri, or even down to the Gulf of Mexico. And that's all because of this Missouri River watershed. Fontenelle Forest is one of the oldest privately owned nature preserves in the entire country. The wetlands here at Fontenelle Forest is kind of a hidden treasure, but I wish it wasn't so hidden. I wish more people knew about how accessible these places are to them. One of my favorite things that keeps me coming back to the floodplain here is not only just how beautiful it is, but also American toads. And it's my happy place to come out here and follow these toads around. As ridiculous as that may seem, everyone needs a hobby, and I guess toads are mine. So about 4 years ago, I started putting together this series of images on white backgrounds that I've come to call Floodplain. And the Floodplain project is all about documenting the biodiversity of the Missouri River and its surrounding floodplain. The tagline for this project is a clear view of life in the Big Muddy. We produced 50 of these sidewalk decals that each one of them had a different species that's native to the Missouri River or its watershed printed on them, as well as facts about those animals and a link to a website where you could learn more about them. This was put all along the Bob Carey pedestrian bridge, which is right in the heart of Omaha. The thing about the Floodplain project is that I don't know if I'm ever going to be done with it. It's like a sweater that has a little piece of thread hanging off of it. The more you pull, the more it seems to unravel, but there just keeps on coming more and more and more. I think wetlands are incredibly important, not only for their ecological services, but also for our own mental well-being. We need these kinds of places to let go a little bit and to reconnect with nature. If there's one thing you can do to learn more about this watershed, just get out there and explore it a little bit. We as a society, we need to understand that this river will flood on occasion and that we need to provide these opportunities for these floodplains to exist and not completely constrain it. And that may mean reevaluating how we manage our water resources coming from this Missouri River. The stake of entire species are at risk depending on how we manage this river. It's not a simple solution. There are no easy answers, but I think it's something that we definitely need to pay attention to in the coming years.